Welcome to another edition of Operation American Dream. I'm your host, Daniel Lehman, and your other host, Eve Nasby. We got a great show planned for you. Ready to do it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Operation American Dream coming at you right now.
Today we have the one and only Paul Falcone. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Eve. Great to be here.
So for our viewers, you are one of the most prolific authors I actually know in the field of human resources and also in the field of helping veterans transition from the military into the civilian workforce. And you've written a book, one of 11 books, called Boots to Loafers. So let's just talk about how you have put it in a nutshell for folks to easily and effectively transition out of the military when it's such a hard thing to do.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually co-wrote that book, Eve.
Okay.
And John Phillips, who at the time was working with Coca-Cola, reached out to me. And he said, Paul, I'm a retired Army lieutenant colonel. And I want to write this book for the audience because I'm in charge. I kind of spearhead a lot of the veteran recruiting here at Coca-Cola in Atlanta. But you've written all the books on how to find a job and how to hire people.
Right.
So he said, could you help me with this? And I said, I would absolutely love to partner with you on that. And I think the key to the book was to try and make it as easy as possible for people because there's so much information out there. It's easy to go on, overwhelm mode.
Right.
And so keep it simple, teach them how to do some of the basic things and then answer most of their questions that are probably going to come up along the way.
It's so hard because the transition GPS classes that they have access to is like just this overload dump of information. And so by the time they're out, their heads are spinning and they're not real sure which direction to go. And I think your book, Boots to Loafers, can really help them get some traction when they're transitioning out.
Right. And I think the idea was, for me, if you look on the internet, the number of resources, it's a wonderful thing. I mean, the country is very much in the mode of wanting to help.
Yes.
And employers want to hire.
Yes.
But there's just so much information when you go out there. It's like, wow, where do I even start? And so one of the things I talk about at the front of the book is, you can kick the can around, you can try some of these websites, but really focus on maybe one with a backup. You can't have 17 websites that you're referring to all the time. It's just too much information.
Right. And don't think that you know everything because you're going to be coming into a rude awakening when you think you know the way without picking up a book like Boots to Loafers and trying to use this as your map, right? You're going to learn the hard way and you're going to get a lot of bumps on your head.
I think the idea is, Boots to Loafers isn't the only book that's in the field. But the reality is when you pick a book, make sure it's one that's teaching you how, not just what. I think everyone knows what to do.
Right.
They just don't know how to do it.
Right.
And so what you want to focus on is something that kind of walks you through how to say it. What does it look like when you write back that thank you letter or whatever it happens to be so that they have real hardcore examples that they can model on rather than have to start from scratch.
Right. Excellent. Well, you also have written one of the 11. This is a brand new release.
Yes.
So it still smells like it's got that new book smell.
Fresh off the press.
Fresh off the presses. 75 ways for managers to hire, develop, and keep great employees. And this is another answer book.
It is.
So tell us what's in here.
All my books are answer books. The idea is I've been in human resources most of my career, and I've headed up HR some really, really good companies, but I've always been the best, I think, person to figure out what's needed out there because I knew what I needed. And one of the things that I didn't have as a VP of HR at the various companies where I've worked was one book to get my VPs, my directors, my managers in the field all on the same page in terms of performance, in terms of conduct, in terms of ethics. I wanted a book with a heart. I didn't want it to be a policy and procedure manual.
Right.
But you really need something that kind of gets everyone on the same page pretty quickly, and that's kind of how I created that book.
Well, you're one of the most prolific professionals in HR in the nation. You're always traveling, always keynoting, speaking everywhere. In fact, SHRM, the Society for Human Resources Management, has a top 10 book list, and 4 of your books are on that list.
Yes, they are, actually.
That's a pretty good statistic
not the new
right
one,
there.
though. Not the new one.
Not yet.
Something to look forward to.
It will be there.
Yes.
So tell us what's in here. Give some stories of what we can expect in that book.
I think the reality becomes, the way I did the book is I wanted to make it as easy to present. And I'm not a sports guy myself, but I used a sports metaphor. So part 1 was on effective hiring, because it all starts with that. Part 2 is what I call, leadership offense strategies, which is motivating and developing your team. Part 3 was leadership defense strategies, how to protect your company, how to protect yourself, not to step on a landmine, because inadvertently sometimes managers do. And Part 4, the last part, Eve, was on what I call workplace wisdom, which is how to brand yourself and how do you become someone's favorite boss. Because that really is the greatest gift that the workplace offers, in my opinion, is that leadership opportunity to help mold other people's lives.
Right.
So it's nice. What I did in this one, for example, is in the hiring piece. A lot of managers are not comfortable hiring. And so the reality becomes you have to teach them to ask different questions and focus on questions that get the candidates really excited about everything so that they can really show their best self. It's a selfless approach to interviewing. It's almost like a coaching interview. So I could share some of those questions if the time permits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, one of the things I would say is instead of saying, tell me your greatest strength and what's your greatest weakness and where do you see yourself in 5 years, the questions are more about career introspection. Tell me what criteria you're using in selecting your next company, your next job, your next role. What are the ingredients that need to go in there from a professional development standpoint in terms of how you're creating your own development plan? Explain to me why this would be a good move in your career progression. And how could you explain this opportunity to a prospective employer 5 years from now? Why would it make sense for you?
And I love that perspective too, because I think oftentimes folks who go into an interview, they're in the defensive position, they're answering questions, and their strengths, weaknesses, and the basics, but they're not really being persuaded to join this company. And now we've got a talent shortage, and employees, potential employees, have a choice, right? And so for you to educate the hiring managers on how not to just ask the questions, but really let's sell this person on our organization and really find out they're not just making a career change, they're making a life change. And so let's dig for a little bit more information.
And I agree with you, because the idea is they have to make themselves a little vulnerable in this process. These aren't easy questions, but they're good questions. And someone walks out and says, wow, I've never been asked those questions before, but they really were interested in me. And every once in a while, Eve, you'll see a candidate who says, I normally don't say this in an interview, but, and that's when you know you've got the real person.
Yes.
You've made it safe for them to make themselves a little vulnerable. And that's a healthy thing in a relationship because it builds trust.
Now, on the other side of that, as we have veterans who are in transition in interview situations, do you think it's beneficial for them to become vulnerable?
Yes, actually I do. There's a TED Talk on vulnerability and how important that is. And I think the reality becomes is when you interview, you really want to put your best foot forward, and your best foot is always your true self. Too many times, candidates read the books on how to answer questions, and employers read the books on how to ask questions. And you get a QA, but it's always arm's length. You never get to know the real person. You've got to figure out as an employer how to get to know someone in 30 minutes. And as a candidate, you have to figure out how do I make them really understand who I truly am.
Excellent. Paul, author of 11 books, Boots to Loafers, and 75 Ways for Managers to Hire and Develop and Keep, very important.
Don't forget keep.
Don't forget keep great employees. Thank you for being a part of our show. And this is not the last of you that we will see. So thanks again for all that you do, especially in helping our veterans transition.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with more of Operation American Dream. Don't go away.
All right, welcome back to Operation American Dream. As you know, one of the pillars of what we always talk about, in addition to employment and entrepreneurship and homeownership, one of the main facets that lead into all of those things is financial literacy. And part of that, obviously, you can't mention that without some element of planning. And we've got the First Command crew here to help us in that space. And what's interesting about the First Command company is that you not only serve veterans, but you guys also are veterans. We were talking in the green room, and we got kind of a wide swath of the services. So Chet, you were a Navy captain. You were an aviator.
I was.
And so, how long ago did you retire? You retired, obviously, out of the Navy.
Well, I spent 10 years flying jets in the Navy, attack aircraft. Then I got out, stayed in the Naval Reserve, and as a total about 30 years, they retired me.
And then you transitioned into the financial planning. You're a certified financial planner.
When I left the Navy, I got into financial planning.
Right. So transitioned out after you left the Navy.
Right.
Ed, former Army.
Yes, I was a former Army chemical weapons officer, and spent only about 5 years active duty, and then transitioned to civilian life and worked in the big corporations for a few years, and found that First Command was a way better fit for me and my personality.
Something beautiful about being a veteran serving veterans still,
That
right?
it was the shared mission that really brought me back to
Sure.
be still in that military community
Absolutely.
and work with people who serve every day.
Chad, you find the further along you get out, the more you kind of you miss. I mean, it keeps you close.
You
Right.
do, but since we work almost exclusive with active duty and retired military, I'm never far away from what I used to do.
Absolutely. And then Chris, Marine Corps veteran like myself.
Absolutely.
Semper Fi, my friend. So you flew 53s.
I did, yes.
Here at Miramar.
I did.
And then you transitioned out a couple years ago, and you were actually a client of theirs, and you decided, based on your experience, that it would be a good move to kind of get into the industry and help others do the same.
Absolutely. Yeah, they made a big difference in my life. So I called Chet and said, "Hey, can I come work for you guys?" And he said, "Come on over."
Oh, that's awesome. So tell me about First Command. How was it created? How was it founded? Anybody?
When
You've been there the longest.
Yeah, I've been around for 35 years with this organization. When I was looking for my next passion, I heard about this company in Fort Worth, Texas, that was started by a retired lieutenant colonel in the Air Force that was the commanding officer of a bomber squadron. And one day they lost a crew of about 7 or 8 crew members, and he figured out that they left families behind that no one was there to service and take care of. And from that auspicious start, our company began. And as those of us in the past have left the service and we're looking for our next passion, we gravitated to this organization. And now we're worldwide. I've been in 5 different locations over my time, and that's the passion of First Command.
So the concept of veterans serving veterans is obviously unique and really powerful. What's another thing that makes First Command different than the other firms that are out there?
You know, what really I think separates First Command is the veterans serving veterans, and I really look at that in a couple of different ways. The first is our mission statement. The mission statement of First Command is coaching those who serve in their pursuit of financial security. And I think the most important word is the first word, coaching. We are financial coaches for the military members. And we found that they're very coachable people. They like working on teams. They're used to that type of relationship. So I think that we enter that type of relationship with the military members is different than anybody else. Nobody really focuses on the coaching aspect.
You know what's funny is the military is very tactical, right? And then money people treat so emotional.
Right.
You know, and they should really have some tactics behind that. So the coaching element and is really key.
And what we do is we really work to take that emotion out of it because it hits too close to home to most people.
Sure.
So, but to have an objective person who's probably chewed some of the same dirt you have along the way, to be able to look at it and say, like any good coach, you're doing good, or maybe we need to do things a little bit different. So I think the coaching aspect really it brought me into First Command, a lot like Chris and Chet. I was a client in the Army before. And I think another important aspect is we don't chase wealth, we build it. We really focus on getting people started on their financial plan.
Which I can tell you is completely atypical.
It's unique to the industry.
Massively.
We specialize in people in middle income, military income brackets. So you don't have to come with a big lump sum. We focus on getting people started and then keeping them on path the rest of the way.
Yeah, so
I like to say we're a get rich slow type of firm.
Well, yeah, long-sighted, starting the plan. I mean, everybody started somewhere on their
Absolutely.
journey to retirement or journey to financial freedom.
Right, and you can start small, and then you just build from there.
Yeah, and so a lot of the bigger firms and a lot of the firms, period, are looking for a big outset kind of initial lump sum because that's where they're getting compensated, but they're really leaving behind a big swath of the community that really needs the advice, right? So speaking of that military demographic, what's some stuff that's happening in the industry? Maybe Chris, you can cover this. What's something happening in the industry that the military should really be aware of?
I would say right now the main focus of any military member should be the new blended retirement system. It starts in January 1st, 2018, and it's really going to change the way military members look at their pensions. So the beauty of the old system was it was enter the military, 20 years or more, walk away with your pension. Now there's a lot more decision making that's involved from early in your career. And I don't think any one of us up here would argue that generally you're not making great financial decisions in your early 20s and late teens. So having the coaching of a financial professional is going to be absolutely crucial.
So how we so we have really quickly. I mean, how is this system now? Like you got TSP and you got the retirement, and then how does that change, and when does that change?
Sure. So right now there's really two components to the military retirement system, and that is going to be TSP, which is for civilian lingo. It's going to be a 401k equivalent, and then you have your military pension, which is kind of like an annuity. You do a period of time, you get your high 3th years, and you get paid a percentage of that based on the years you serve. Now with the new military system, you're going to have to start making decisions on whether you want auto matching, auto contributions, and how you want to take your bonuses, and then a 20% reduced pension if you do nothing else.
So it's really going to be a situation where the impetus is on you to make smart financial decisions. It's going to be much less of just a set in stone kind of this is what you get, and it's going to be much more, and so that's obviously something that you guys can help with. I really appreciate you guys coming on. You guys are hopefully going to be part of the show into the future and answer some of the questions that our viewers have. If anyone's interested in reaching out to First Command, they can do so at the link below. Thank you guys so much for coming on, and thanks for being a part of the show and serving our veterans in the community.
It's our pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be back with more Operation American Dream. Stick around.
Welcome back to Operation American Dream. I'm Eve Nasby here in studio with Jeff Winkler. Jeff is from Origin Code Academy. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you are the proprietor of this organization. It's only been around for a year?
Yeah, it's
right?
a year and a week.
A year and a week.
Yeah.
Well, happy anniversary.
Thanks.
That's
Appreciate
great.
it.
So, Jeff, tell us about this organization and what it is that you're doing to help veterans who are in transition find a new job and a new career path.
Yeah, so the premise is that we can take any student, as long as they have a good work ethic, and within the 12 weeks of our program, take them from little to no tech experience to getting them their first software developer job, graduating the course. So naturally, a lot of veterans reach out to us to kind of go through the program. And because we're in San Diego and it's a very veteran-friendly city, they're actively searching out and will ask, like, do you have any veterans, before they ask for other candidates per se from our class.
I think that's so exciting.
Yeah.
And I think, too, what you're offering to veterans and other people is hope. Because if you are, and I think you gave a great example, and I want you to talk about that, the guy that was working at Target as a cashier.
Yeah.
And he was making...
I can't remember his target salary. I don't think we asked for his target salary. It was like
maybe
35 or something like that.
Okay, so that's like $17
It was
an hour.
something in the 30s.
He takes a 12-week class, and what happens?
And so afterwards, he actually graduated from the class and ended up making $80,000 at his job. Right?
That's over doubling his salary
yeah.
after 12 weeks.
Yes, that's correct.
That's incredible. So
Yeah.
tell us how you do that. What does it look like?
So I would like to take credit for all of that, but the reality of the market that we find ourselves in, right? Everybody's using apps on their phones pretty much all day, and sometimes all night also.
Yeah, right.
And so there's just so much pent-up demand from, if you go to a company's website and it doesn't look pretty, or they don't follow you around via email, then they're not necessarily doing their job. So no matter what industry a company's in, they're always going to need software developers, and a lot of them are slowly realizing that.
Yeah.
So in San Diego, it's really, really hard to find a software developer that, for instance, our teachers that are software developers, they actively get 3 to 5 job offers per week.
Oh my
because they're senior developers,
Right.
So I have to be super nice to the teachers so they stick around.
Right.
But that's just the reality, is that they're constantly getting bombarded with job offers because no one can find enough talent.
Yeah.
In San Diego, or really in the country as a whole.
So tell me, if I'm a veteran, I'm transitioning out, and I was a mechanic, right? So can you take somebody like me with basic knowledge, but I can learn fast, I'm a team player, I've got a great attitude, and are you telling me in 12 weeks you can teach me some sort of language that's going to get me a position that's paying $65,000 to $80,000?
Yeah, for sure.
So
As
what are
long
you
as-
teaching me? What are the languages out there?
So I would say the most popular in San Diego at the moment is Angular. And actually the situation you just described is somebody who's in our class right now. His
Okay.
name's Jesse. So he moved here from Palm Springs, was a mechanic before, just wanted to essentially do a less physical job,
Sure.
Something more stimulating for his brain. And so he is actually, currently, Angular is the biggest language, I would say, in San Diego.
Okay.
A lot of the front-end stuff or the graphics you see on websites are super popular.
Right.
But more importantly, because any languages can change all the time, and it's not that weird for, this may be too technical, but for an employer to say, can you please use Python? And maybe we don't teach Python. But we're really essentially teaching in 12 weeks the process of learning because it's much different learning code than it
Right.
would be math per se.
And I think you also said, and I think this is very unique for any organization that's in education, your curriculum, what you teach, changes every quarter because it's based on what San Diego companies are saying. Hey, Jeff, I need coders in this space, right?
Right, yeah. So it's very different than, I talk to a lot of traditional education, maybe presidents or CEOs, and their biggest challenges that they have to turn in their curriculum, right? And then they get it back maybe a year later. But a year later, their biggest frustration is that the employers don't use it anymore.
Right.
Don't want to have moved on to a new technology or sometimes even a product because things move so fast.
Right.
So I meet with probably an employer a day on average.
Wow.
And just getting a feel for what San Diego is using technology-wise helps us shape our curriculum. And because, we're nimble, we can kind of change that every quarter. So what we taught a year ago in our first class is probably only about 15% of what we teach now.
Is that right?
And the rest is filled up with, really Angular, like I mentioned before, because
Right.
that's what they're asking for.
So I almost guaranteed a job when I get out since the demand is so high and the supply is so low.
Yeah, so because, we all have to live by our attorney's words. Guarantee is a word that we try to stay away from.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. But more than likely, if you pass the class,
Yes,
you're going to find an employer
as
because
long
you're
as you
talking
have
to
a
them.
work ethic, and and a lot of times too, so if somebody in the first 2 weeks realizes they don't enjoy software, they're not getting it, or because our role is not really to take money from people that we're not really providing and adding
Right.
value to their lives. Is our kind of our philosophy. So everybody has the first 2 weeks to kind of drop out if software is not for them. We just had somebody drop out yesterday because they don't want to be in software,
Yeah.
and so it's not a fit for them. But as long as you're willing to, go through the 12 weeks, and then a big part of any job, right, is applying for them. So just as important as the job portion after. So we actually have a dedicated team member that will sit with you and meet with you every week after the job search to ensure that you're applying to, if you apply to 10 jobs a week here in San Diego, you'll have a job within 12 weeks maximum, but it usually takes between 30 and 60 days max, as long as you're putting in the work.
What you may not know is
Yeah.
that on average, veterans, it takes maybe 9 to 12 months for really, really good people with great skill sets to find work in San Diego. It's hard, or it can be very hard. So what you're saying is in half of that time, I could be making twice as much money with a skill set that's never going to go away.
Right. Yeah. And the thing that we stress too with the students is that they shouldn't focus as much on their starting salary, even though, it's in most cases sometimes twice as much as they're making now. Because really the ceiling for your salary within tech, right? The average tech salary in San Diego is $114,500. Right? So it's really about the long game of
Right.
doing something that you enjoy, and whether it's, healthcare or at some point you could be a doctor, but if you don't know how to use software, maybe you're not a super effective doctor.
Right.
And that's not unconceivable for most people. So really just the fact that you're kind of in the game per se
Right.
kind of gives you a chance to increase your wages definitely over the course of your lifetime in a very real way.
Well, I love what you're doing because it's going to help our economy here in San Diego, because what we don't want is the veterans who are transitioning out to leave and go home because they can't find a job here in San Diego. We want them to stay. They want to
Right.
stay, and you're helping them find employment. So thank you for all that you're doing. I know we've got the website on the bottom of the screen right now. Just a last question. How do they get enrolled with you, and then what is the cost of being involved in the class?
Sure. So the cost is $12,500 for the 12-week class. And then the process is we screen pretty heavily before the course because we want to make sure that they really have like a success mindset, if you
Sure.
will. Veterans are great students. They're probably our best students, really just because it's really just like how hungry are you to kind of get what your goal
Yeah.
is per se.
Right.
And so they just apply online, and then we interview everybody in person, bring them into the classroom so they can kind of get a feel for what it's like, and then give them a decent amount of pre-work if they have no experience, and then they're really on their way.
Awesome. Jeff Winkler, thank you so much for being a part of Operation American Dream. The company is Origin Code Academy, and you can check them out online.
All right, welcome back to Operation American Dream. Those that know me know that veteran home ownership is like the key to the world for me. It's if you serve your country, you deserve to own a piece of it. And to help us understand some of those concepts and to help us talk about one of the great areas in San Diego, East County, Kimo Quantz, how you doing, man?
Fantastic. And you?
I'm doing great, man. So you don't wear it on your sleeve, man, but you're a Coast Guard veteran yourself.
Yep. Did one tour in the Coast Guard. I probably could use some discipline in my life at that time. So,
like most of us,
yeah.
like most of us.
my dad is retired Navy, and my
awesome, man.
grandfather was a Marine, and I kind of wanted to do something different. So I didn't even know anything about the Coast Guard, so I looked it up, and I was like, I'll give this a shot.
Well, one thing, like being a Marine, like when things pop off, you kind of go, you go do stuff. In the Coast Guard, you guys always have some mission going on, always some drug intervention. I mean, the things that the Coast Guard do in San Diego are just incredible, man.
Yeah, I had to do it. I mean, literally every time I worked. I was a radioman, you know, and so
Where were you stationed?
Last duty station was LA, but
cool.
also Detroit, and then I did some time in the Bering Sea.
That's the other thing is like people think the Coast Guards are all, but they're in charge of all waterways all over the place, and they do just like an incredible job. Where were you recruited out of?
Seattle.
No way. So is
Yeah.
that where you grew up?
No, I actually grew up in East County. Yeah,
Oh,
in
you're kidding
Santee.
me. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So it's all coming full circle. Yeah. Tell me about East County. What are the markets that you serve? Where are the, you know?
Yeah, so my office is in Santee,
Okay.
right next to the Home Depot in Santee. We been out there doing real estate, and it's really a lot better price point than a lot of places in San Diego.
Sure.
We're right about median price, about $450
Wow.
for a detached home, and right about $275, $300 or so for a condo or townhouse.
Yeah.
So it's one of the places in the county where it's actually kind of affordable.
Yeah,
you know?
and it's perfect for a military family also. A lot of people, even like down in 32nd Street, some of the naval bases down in San Diego, are driving all the way the heck up to Temecula because they've heard Temecula is amazing and stuff like that, and they really should look out east.
Oh, absolutely. From where I live, you know, it takes me 15, 20 minutes to get downtown via the 94.
Yeah.
So we're not by Yuma like a lot of people may think. You know, we're not that far away.
Well, and there's an example, 1822 White in El Cajon is one of your listings that you have right now that would be a great buy for a military family.
Absolutely. This one, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, over 1,700 square feet. It's on 1/3 of an acre. Nice flat area.
Another thing you get out, you get land, right? You're not
Exactly.
yeah.
You're not going to see that in North
475. You're
Park
looking
or whatever.
at a condo with a 300 HOA too. You know, if you're not going out, you know. So sorry, man, I interrupted you.
Oh no, just with that flat land, you know, at 1822 White Way, there's room for people if they do, you know, go to the desert or enjoy having a boat. You know, you have the room for that kind of stuff. You know, which is one of the things that's great about East County. You know, and a lot of people enjoy doing, whether it's going to the river or RVing or going to the desert and using all your toys. So.
And that's certainly something that military families tend to
Yeah.
to like to do. So and again, I mean, people look at the risk of buying, but they don't look at the risk of not buying. Over a 3-year period, BAH, if you don't buy something, if you're renting or you're on base housing, it's about $90,000. $475, you're paying maybe slightly over, you may be paying $2,800 on $475. You're renting for $24.25,
Sure.
right? And you're not going to own it. You're not going to get any of the tax benefits. So if you're interested in any of the East County real estate, Chemo's. Reach out to Chemo and we'll show his URL. What's your URL? It's
The Quance Group. That's TheQuance group.com.
thequancegroup.com. And then if you want more information on 1822 White and El Cajon 475, great property, check it out and check us out on OperationAmericanDream.tv, and we'll have that link posted there as well.
We have had a great show this morning, haven't we?
I love our shows. I love that we focus on employment, we focus on entrepreneurship, we focus on home ownership and financial literacy, and that we can be a resource for the community that way.
And it just keeps getting better. So stay tuned next Friday morning right here on Operation American Dream.